for a guy like me, when I was growing up, I read all those magazines. I read Circus, and I read about recording sessions, and my dick used to get hard. Like just, the Stones going to Jamaica. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Everybody going to Jamaica for 2 months, whether we like each other or not. We got a big bag of reefer. We fucking get a couple black chicks, and we start, whatever. To me, that was phenomenal. Exile on Main Street. Now, what happened with Exile? It wasn't somebody owed money. Didn't somebody owe money? That's why they were hiding. That's why they were in France. Somebody was looked for. Either Keith Richards was looking. Somebody was looking for somebody.
There's a documentary about it, and they touch on it lightly because it was basically a documentary, Exile on Main Street documentary. If you got Netflix, you can watch it on that. It was basically about the making of the record. But, it was, they were tax.
Right, tax. It was tax.
Yeah, tax. Because in England, if you made a certain amount of money, if you stayed in the country, you had to pay so much taxes. So if you make the record somewhere else, you're not going to be hit with all those taxes.
Do you prefer working solo or with a group? Because I've worked with a few comedians, and comedians don't really tour that much together. Some of them do, but not really. It's like a single person. I would imagine with a 5 or 6 person group.
Yeah. Comedy is more like boxing.
Yeah,
it's only 2 guys in the ring at the time. It's a men on one-on-one. A band is really a team sport.
But how often does it go bad? Like, how often do people hate each other and fight about money?
How many teams? Name a sport. Is there any happy team? No, of course not. There's something going on. Because everybody, we were talking about this. That's the crazy factor. You have to be crazy to do what you do, Joey. It's,
No, I've always known it. I spoke to my wife
crazy.
about it last night. We were talking about something, and she goes, is that person Joey Diaz crazy? Or the other crazy,
yeah.
And I go, Joey D is crazy. He's crazy, but he's not like hearing voices and shooting people. And
to be crazy doesn't mean to be evil.
Right? No.
It's just like outside of the box. You're doing. You got dreams, and you just go for them. You're not going to listen to everybody else telling you, oh no, because you're whatever you are, you're never going to make it, and whatever. So you leave town because you want to get away from these people, and you wind up wherever you think all the opportunities are. To me, it was LA, because the record companies were here, and all the musicians that thought like-minded were here. So I joined a band, and I slept on the floor, and I did all this crazy shit, that if I look back at it now and go, oh my God, how did I have the balls to do all of that? But I did, And again, if you lose that edge, that craziness, you're in trouble, because you're not gonna move forward. You're not going to progress. It's the craziness that will keep you going forward, getting better, getting crazier.
I always thought when I got off drugs that my comedy was going to be done. That was one of the reasons towards the end I didn't want to get off the blow, nothing. And then I thought about it, and I was like, wait a second. I was always fucking crazy. I just went to Miami, and I saw people, they were holding Los Santo Mio for 35 years. They held a bunch of my stuff. T-shirts and trophies, and I went down there and I started talking to her, and I said, I was going to your house on 148th Street, and she goes, when I first met you, she goes, when you called, I started thinking about you, and how our evolution, she was 18 and I was 6 when I met my godmother's daughter. We all got back together, and I used to go to 148th Street, and she goes, you were a quiet fucking kid. She goes, you built models. She goes, you had 1 million fucking models. She goes, you would lock yourself in a room and put on music and build models all fucking day. 10 hours, 3-4 models in a day. It was brilliant. You paint them and like this. I don't remember. I really don't remember like little things.
Really?
And she goes, but then you got hit in the head with that lunchbox. And that was the beginning of the end. She goes, not that the lunchbox made you crazy. You just didn't like it. It brought the real inside of you out. You were scared, you were timid, you didn't know the language. She goes, but once they hit you in the head with that lunchbox that day, everything changed. She goes, you became aggressive, you got stitches, and even in the hospital. I remember you told us that night at dinner at your mother's bar, you said, this will never happen to me again. Nobody will ever hit me in the fucking head with a lunchbox. In fact, I'm going to hunt them down tomorrow. And they all looked at me like, Jose Antonio, You can't go hunting these kids down in Central Park. And I went to Central Park by myself. And then when I moved to Jersey, I was so insecure about being Cuban that the first day I went out, there was a fight. And I knew for me to get through to these guys, I had to jump in that fight and stick up for this kid that was getting beat up by himself. As crazy as it was, he was one kid against 8. That's as crazy. Bruce Lee can't do that shit. But in the back of my mind, I knew for me to get into this neighborhood. I had just come from New York City, where there was a couple Spanish people, there's Puerto Ricans, whatever in the neighborhood. I was moving to North Bergen, New Jersey in 1960, 1970. There's not too many Spanish people. They were in Union City. They were that way, and they were in West New York. They weren't in North Bergen. So that I lived in that house for a year before I went out. Do you know that? A year I lived in that house. I would always go to my mother's bar in Union City. I wouldn't go play with the kids in the neighborhood. And my mom would tell me, "Oye, calabaza, calabaza, todo mundo, you gotta go. You gotta go play." And one day I left with my white clothes on because I used to dress them. My mom used to dress me in white with the white sneakers with a gold chain. And I went around the corner. I heard them yelling and screaming, and I jumped in and backed that kid. And my life I never looked back. I always had to follow that mentality. I always had to be fucking nuts. But what people didn't know was that I wasn't trying to be nuts. I really was fucking nuts. It just came to me natural. And then as I got older, I got the Cuban in me. And I worked very hard to get that Cuban man out of me. The jealousy, the quick reaction, the hand. My hand would come up first. I wouldn't even give a fuck. I'd come flying through a window. I worked hard to get that out of my system. Like, I really had to work hard to get the cubanismo, what do you call it? The cubanazo out of your system. Yeah. Because it was going to take me down. It still takes me down. That's why I avoid a lot of different situations. We're going to have Steve Byrne on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. And he called me this year to ask me if I wanted to do his show. And I thanked him because I go, the last time I saw you, I was very crazy. I went at somebody at the Comedy Store. And as they were breaking us up, I remember looking, and it was Steve Byrne, and looking at his face going, holy fuck, this guy's nuts. And my anger wasn't towards Steve Byrne. But him seeing me in that situation always made me very embarrassed in front of Steve Byrne. I never wanted to see Steve Byrne again. If he wouldn't have called me, I wouldn't have been his friend anymore because he saw me. It's like the night I stuck up for Marilyn. My friend died, and somebody kept torturing her when she was alive, this fucking producer from L.A. And at the wake, he showed up to the wake. He had the balls to show up for the wake.